Hey everyone, my name is Penny Zanker, and it's time to reset. This podcast goes beyond just navigating change. It's about new ways of thinking about how you can approach challenges, how you can shift your mindset when needed, create some space and grace for yourself so that you can rethink, recharge, and reprioritize when and where needed. Are you ready to unlock your full potential? Thank you for hitting play and sharing this next episode with me. It's time to reset. Hello, and welcome to Take Back Time. My name is Penny Zanker, and I'm your host. And on this show, I'm always looking for, as you know, people who are going to challenge you, people who are going to make you think differently, and at the ultimate, it's going to help you to be more productive, to take back time. Means working smarter and not harder. Get off that gerbil wheel and really be more intentional about the way that we are doing things. And today I'm excited to have Chris Dyer with us. He's a recognized company culture and remote work expert. And as a former CEO managing thousands of people, his companies consistently were named best place to work. So he knows what he's doing. They've also been named the fastest growing company by Inc. magazine 5 times. He routinely consults and speaks, and Inc. magazine ranked him the #1 leadership speaker on culture. He has 3 best-selling books, The Power of Company Culture and Remote Work, and has been named #5 on the Leadership Power List, top 50 voice in leadership, and top 40 change management guru, as well as top 50 global thought leader. And. So without further ado, we are just going to bring Chris on. Hi, Chris. Welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks so much for having me, Penny.
So, what you're talking about is so important today. Company culture, really having people be engaged in their work. Why is it so hard?
Well, I don't know if it is hard. I just think that people don't value it sometimes or aren't really sure where to focus their efforts and time, right? So when we actually go after good culture, it's pretty easy. I don't want to say it's easy, but it's not like it's some unknown or it takes some great, feat or millions of dollars or something that, is outside. It's not the outside of anyone's reach. Most people believe culture is an art, but in reality, it's a science. And when we put forth the right focus and we look at the right things and we focus on the right things, culture really comes into line pretty quickly.
You're talking my language, the focusologist, when we focus on the right things. So if, just in case people aren't sure what those right things are, let's dive right in and understand, well, okay, so if it's about focusing on the right things, clearly many companies are focusing on the wrong things. So what are the right things? What are we not valuing like we should be?
Yeah, and there are some companies that are focusing on the wrong thing, but I would say the biggest mistake is they're focusing on too many things. It's like trying to be good at a whole lot of things instead of, being good at a few things. And we see this with, even inside of companies being good at their product or their service, right? If they're really good at a few things, they tend to master the market pretty well. There are exceptions to that, but I think the focus problem is one part of it. Now, so what are you supposed to do? Well, there are 7 pillars that make a great company culture.
But 7 feels like a lot. We don't want to interject, right? We're having a little challenge each other.
Yeah.
I was expecting like 2 or 3. 7 things? Let's talk about that first.
Yeah, so it's an inconvenient truth that it's 7. I would have loved for it to have been 5 or 3 or whatever, but when I went out to study all these different organizations and, we tested this, it was consistently, we were hearing the same thing, although sometimes with different synonyms, the same things were coming back with it. And it landed at 7 all by itself, which it didn't hurt that that's my favorite number. But I didn't make it 7. We just kept taking the data, kept taking what great companies were doing, and it kept being these 7 words popping up.
Okay. So let's hear them. And then afterwards, I'll have you think about what are those things? Because if we're focusing on too many things, then that must mean we're focusing on 14, 20, 25. So I'd like to know, when we get what those things are, what is it that we can give less attention to or value less?
Sure. So the 7 pillars are transparency, positive leadership or positivity, measurement, uniqueness, listening, mistakes, and recognition. And so what I typically see is that organizations are doing pretty good with a few of those. They may be even doing good with 5 of those things.
Mm-hmm.
But ultimately, there's at least 2, sometimes more, where they just suck. They're just really bad, and that's causing them not to have a great culture.
So would you suggest, a lot of times I have people, even if it's not easy to do, I'd have leaders rate themselves on a scale from 1 to 10, or have people vote in, 1 to 10, where do you stand? So that you can at least find, where are you doing well, and not only just in your opinion, but in the audience's, your employees' opinion, but where also are you doing really badly? What's your method of helping people to get clear on where to focus?
Yeah, and that's a great suggestion. Often when I'm talking to organizations, it's very clear. Like they get uncomfortable talking about 1 or 2 of them, right? Or they just say, we're just not doing that at all. The biggest one that usually people identify pretty quickly that they know they could be doing a lot better is transparency, right? So are we sharing goals with each other? Do you even know what your team members' goals are for the year? Or is it just you and your boss are the only 2 people that know what the goals are, right? Mm-hmm. Wouldn't it be nice if everyone on the team knew everybody's goals and we were all aligned and trying to help each other reach them for the year? Like, this is not like, oh, I get my raise and you don't, right? We should all be trying to help each other get where we're trying to go. Do we know what our boss's goals are so we can make our boss look good and help the team look good and, get more for next year?
Right. Kind of that cascade, what are the top goals and how does that cascade down through the organization so that everybody can... I think we're better problem solvers when we know the bigger picture, right? Because then we can not just see our little microcosm, but we can think more outside the box when we know where we're truly going.
Yeah. I mean, just think if your boss's goal was to save, to cut 10% in costs, you're going to start bringing them ideas on how to save money, not bringing them ideas that are going to cost us money.
Right.
I mean, just sort of knowing that alignment can help you be a really key player for that team. We also talk about sharing financial data. At my companies, we used to share the P&L every single month to every single employee in the company. Mm-hmm. And we would provide them with training on how to read it. And we would go through what it meant. And maybe I couldn't get super, super, super detailed down to the very bottom line. But obviously, I can't tell everyone exactly what everybody's paid or whatever. Some companies do. They get really comfortable transparency. But when you understand where the money's being spent and you understand what our costs are, it's a lot easier for your staff to go, hey, did you know if we did this, we could save a lot of money over there, right? Or why are we spending...
There's a lot of fear, right? There's a lot of fear in sharing that information. How do you help people overcome that fear of saying, well, then they're going to want a bigger raise, or they're going to, they're going to be poking in areas that they don't belong? What do you say to those types of things when you hear that?
Well, as far as poking in areas that don't belong, I mean, with pretty small exceptions, I think they've got it all wrong, right? We want employees to understand. Now, what I find is typically employees aren't that interested in the areas that don't impact them, right? They tend to let's just say in one department, you're going to get really, really interested in how you're spending money and what we're doing with that department, but you might ignore how we're spending money in a totally different department, especially the larger the organization gets.
Right.
As to what you do, I will tell you that not once did an employee ever come to me and say, well, geez, I noticed last month that our profit looked pretty high. That means I get a raise, right? People are pretty smart about saying, this is the value I brought. This is what I did. And this is why I deserve it. Not, I noticed we're making a lot of money right now. But if you're trying to deal with the fear, I would say start small. Just start with how much did we make this month? What was our sales? What was our goals? And how did we do? Right. And get people used to that. And then you might start giving out some of the different costs and things to departments to discuss. And eventually, as it starts to feel more comfortable and people are handling the information appropriately, you'll get to the point where you're like, here's our P&L, rip it apart. Please find more ways for us to save money, please.
Right. So I think that makes sense, right? Get yourself some comfort, see that it's not all going to fall apart when you show a few things, and then take it from there. That makes sense. So I want to come back to that question that I asked you earlier. So, transparency is an important one. We started to dig into that. And these are 7, when you say them, it's like, oh, of course, right? It sounds obvious. So where are people focusing or giving additional value that they are falling short on these things?
So there are certainly companies that are spending a lot of time. Sometimes it's like the antithesis of the word that I gave you, right? So maybe instead of measuring what matters, they're trying to measure everything. And so they're getting overwhelmed because they literally measure too many things instead of like, well, what are the most important metrics or what's the best thing, right? Does it really
It
matter?
might be in one of those categories, just to use different words. It might be that they're doing recognition or they're doing the measurement, but they're overdoing it, right? They're so overcompensating that it's taking away from another area.
Yes. I mean, measurement's the big one. We can see where if your NPS score, if you have some way to look at how your customer service team is doing, and they're doing really well, if they're hitting your goal, do you really care? Do you really need to measure the other 5,000 things you could measure inside of that department? I mean, if they're hitting your really big goal and they're doing really well and your customers are happy, do we really care like how quickly they answer the phone or like their speed to ticket time? Like there's all these other metrics that we could get into that don't really matter.
Right. Well, I guess that's an interesting question because, if they were more efficient, then they'd be able to handle more customers. So they have to have more personnel because they sit and order pizzas for people.
So it depends. Now, we do see that people will spend too much time. I find it's when they're trying to be perfect, right? Mm-hmm. There is a point of when getting better is going to cause two more problems than the one you solved. Mm-hmm. Right? Or the return just isn't there. So at what point is good enough? And then should we go put our attention somewhere else? Because we might be ignoring the dumpster fire right behind us, but we're like, but we have to just do this one little thing to get like 1% better. And that's not really going to move the ball for us because we're totally ignoring this other problem that, is a huge issue for the organization.
Right. Well, and I think it does tend to be that they're more numbers focused versus people focused in those types of organizations, right? And so that's why there's this overcompensation. And I have this hypothesis, since I don't have all the research underneath it, but I feel like it's this need for control that people are maybe over measure and are over focused on numbers because they're trying to control everything, right? They don't want to give the numbers from transparency perspective because they're keeping it under control. So I think that personally, that is a major issue as well, as to, distribute the control, allow people to, you're not going to be able to control everything. So bring in that trust so that you see that everybody is working towards the common goal and you don't need that control.
Yeah. And there's a lot of really bad leaders out there that want to hide information, try to control for power. I mean, they'll make decisions on spreadsheets, right? And cut something really great or bring in a vendor that wouldn't have been as good for you just because it's 1% cheaper or something. Mm-hmm. I mean, those kinds of companies and those kinds of leaders drive me absolutely crazy, right? I mean, there are soft costs. There are things you can't not put an label on. And if you end up cutting somebody who is saving you all this money or was doing all this stuff or making your customers really, really happy, it has to be a combination between the numbers and the human factor, right? And I think that's when you focus on these 7 pillars, it's impossible to not integrate the organization in a more healthy way.
Let's say you're an employee, right? There's people who are listening who are leaders. There's people who are listening who are working for some of those leaders. What if they have someone that's more focused on the numbers? How do they contribute to help to, they like their job. It's not horrible there. They're just not developing that culture as well as they could. What can the employee do?
Yeah, I think the employee can ask, right? And they need to get curious. And so sometimes no one's ever asked for this information. And maybe the CFO or someone's hiding behind that. Like, well, I'm happy to tell someone if they ever ask me about it, but like they're not going to volunteer it. There's a couple of things you could say. Well, I heard this crazy guy on a podcast and he mentioned they did this. What would happen if we did that, right? Just to say, why don't we do this? Or what would happen? There's a great book called The Great Game of Business by Jack Stack. And it talks about his incredible transparency transformation. I mean, to read that book or to bring it up and have a conversation with somebody in that position of power, again, coming from a place of some bit of research and this is not just, I was in the shower today and was thinking I'd like to see the financials, right? I mean, the bit more thought,
Funny that you bring up that book real quick, because I was going to say that as well. That is a company that is also dedicated to that level of transparency. And, Jack's book, and I think there's some subsequent books, they do a really great job in helping organizations to open up to transparency in it. You could easily just say, hey, I read this book. I think it's really interesting. What do you think? And to your leader.
I mean, Jack talks about how they had to give a lot of education to their employees who didn't understand how to read financial statements. But I mean, they gave the P&L to the guy whose job it is to sweep the floor in the warehouse every day, right? They didn't exclude anybody. And that guy realized they were spending money on something that was killing. It was just absolutely a waste, and went to them. And so the guy who they thought was going to have the least impact by giving this information to had the biggest impact, right?
Yeah.
You just never know where great ideas are going to come from. And I would say as a leader, one of our biggest problems is we say, well, how come people don't have these great ideas? Or how come people don't step up and do something when, the crap hits the fan? Like, why am I the one standing here having to fix everything as the leader? Right. And usually the answer is because they don't know what you know. You've not told them. They don't have the information to even think about great ideas. And then the second part is they don't have the empowerment to go and make those ideas happen, right? But the first problem to solve is, do they have the information they need in order to even possibly come and dream up great ideas when something is going wrong?
Totally. I love that. Well, this is a great place. I'm going to ask you a couple of quick questions, and then we'll let people know where they can find out more about you.
Awesome.
So how do you define productivity and why?
I define productivity as, what's the reasonable metric that we look at for how someone should get their work done, right? So you can take it down to a very base level, like what's your pay and how many of these things, activities did you do? And there is some value in that for somebody who's doing some manual tasks or making, 100 phone calls an hour or something. You can use some of that. But for a lot of employees, and we always struggled with this, is like, how do you measure productivity for a manager, right? And it's hard to do because they're not set in those sort of like more tactile type, activities.
Right.
So we always try to say, what is the big goal? What are we trying to do? Right. And does it feel like we're being efficient? And how can we measure those types of things to see if people are being efficient and their ability to get us to that point?
So I talk about in my new book that's coming out, The Reset Mindset, I talk about reset moments. And that's just taking, more moments because we're so busy today. I hear that leaders don't even have time to lead. They don't have time to think things through and really be strategic like they would like to. So taking these reset moments to rethink and reconnect and really be intentional in their leadership. How would you see putting reset moments into practice for leaders?
I would spend a lot of time coaching my people when they were agreeing to take on something new, when they were adding on to their workload. If they, we got busier in the organization, where I noticed they were adding to their plate, right? That it was my job to coach them and to say, what are you getting rid of? What's
so if they're going to take on this, then they have to let go of that.
Right. Because to me, and when they were doing that on their own, that's another way I would have addressed productivity as well, right? Because they're never going to be happy and they're going to burn out and we're never going to get things done if they keep everything, right? It's like we're sort of like running a relay race together and we've got to keep passing the baton to each other. We've got to keep sharing in that. And we can't just be the only one running around that track, holding onto that thing, right, forever. There has to be times when we step on and step off that track in this analogy, right?
And I think just to sum that up and then we'll get your details, is that you take that reset moment when somebody's adding something to their plate. And I'm going to add something to what you said. And it's also when you as a leader want to add something to someone else's plate, right? Then you also need to take a reset moment for yourself and see what are you okay with that they're going to, delegate or that they're going to take off their plate, right? Because it's not just them taking it on, it's also the leaders deciding to give more. I think that is a really great way and a great time to take a reset moment. So thank you for that.
Yeah, of course.
So Chris, where can people find out more information about you, get your books and take the discussion further with you?
Yeah, so you can go to chrisdyer.com. There's all kinds of great resources there. My books you can find on Amazon, The Power of Company Culture, the second edition, which is the orange one. Looks like this, not the yellow one. The yellow one was the first edition, so get the orange one. You can find that on Amazon or wherever you buy books. And I'm always happy to connect with people on LinkedIn. I'm on TikTok. I'm on Instagram. I'm probably on whatever social platform you're on. I'm probably there. So wherever you hang out, come connect with me. I'm happy to do that.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thanks for having me, Penny.
And thank you all for being here, right? It's 7 things. I know you wish that it was 3, but it's 7 things that are going to help you to stay focused and intentional about how you're driving your culture. And you want to be looking at, do you have the right balance, right? Chris said we can overemphasize or overthink, overwork any particular segment. So just do a quick check for yourself. Is where are you on a scale from 1 to 10? What are the top 2 that are the lowest scores that you can focus on? And I loved it. He said, take a reset moment when you're adding more to someone's plate or someone is adding to their plate. Perfect time. Thanks for being here. My name is Penny Zanker, and this is Take Back Time. We'll see you in the next episode. Hey, thank you for spending this time with me. It really means a lot. If you're feeling a little off, distracted, overwhelmed, stuck, or just out of sync, remember that's your signal to reset. And that's all it takes, just recognizing one reset moment at a time. So stay tuned for more tips, tools, tricks, stories, strategies, all here on Time to Reset. We'll see you in the next episode.